They thought burning down my house would make me join their little HOA club. What they did not know was simple. I literally wrote the municipal fire codes they were about to violate. My name is Marcus Thorne. I am standing in what used to be my kitchen, holding the legal binder that sent an HOA president to federal prison for 8 years. 6 months ago, this was our family's dream home. 2 acres of grandfathered farmland wrapped in a porch where my wife Alina grew herbs, and our twins, Dakota and River, scattered feed for a small flock of chickens. Today, the house is a blackened footprint and a crime scene that exposed a multi-million-dollar fraud. The acrid smell of wet charcoal lives in my clothes. The coffee in my thermos tastes like stubbornness because brewing a pot gets tricky. When your kitchen is a crater, the person who kicked this off does not look like a villain at first glance. Her name is Brenda Kensington, a new arrival with platinum blonde hair that never moves, a white Lexus that never has dust on it, and yoga pants that probably cost more than a month of groceries. She bought into the Willowbrook subdivision and expected the world to bend to what she called community standards. We were the last non-HOA parcel. My grandfather farmed this spot in the 1940s. Our lot was grandfathered when the subdivision sprouted around us. Quarter-acre lots took on covenants while our deed kept agricultural rights. The workshop, the vegetable rows, and a legal chicken coop. I work as a municipal code enforcement officer. For 25 years, I have been the person who knocks when a neighbor builds a deck without permits or stores chemicals in a garage like it is a warehouse. That is important because what followed was not my first. Rodeo Brenda's first knock came with cookies and an application form. "Welcome to the neighborhood," she said, with a smile that felt like a sales pitch. I thanked her, and I told her we predated the HOA by 3 decades and were not required to join. Her smile flickered. Week 3 brought a certified letter about community standards. Week 6 brought anonymous complaints to my city about agricultural activity in a residential zone. That is when the game became simple. I pulled the binder. I helped write. Section 12.3.7 covers agricultural grandfather clauses for properties predating residential zoning. Our chickens were legal. Our garden was legal. Our workshop was legal. I highlighted the section and set the binder by the door like a shield. The compliance blitz arrived on a Monday. 17 violations reported in a week. Illegal chickens. Unpermitted workshop addition. Commercial vegetable operation. Noise disturbance. My office's inbox looked like a blizzard. The problem for Brenda was the nose you develop after decades in enforcement. I can smell a bad report through concrete. Every complaint used identical phrasing, hit the system at the same minute, cited details visible only from our property line. The click of phone cameras became part of breakfast. Brenda began wellness walks past our fence with a pack of HOA. Friends who documented our compost pile like it was a crime scene. False reporting of code violations is a crime in my state. Class C misdemeanor. A $500 fine per incident. On 3 reports, Brenda listed our home as a commercial farm. That upgrade is not a white lie. That is a false instrument. I filed a formal complaint with the city attorney. Then I did what my training taught me. I waited with my case assembled and my facts clean. The city sent a rookie inspector to verify. He looked like he had only seen chicken coops on Instagram. I met him at the property line with my code book, the original 1963 building permits, and the 1940 survey map that shows the lot. We started with chickens. I flipped to the exact clause. We walked to setbacks. We checked the workshop permit and the past inspection sheet. We measured the garden and confirmed personal use scale. He wrote unfounded beside every complaint and noted a harassment pattern. 24 hours later, the city posted a bright yellow, "No violations found" notice on our gate, visible from Brenda's living room. I was checking the mail when she marched across the street. "This is ridiculous," she said loud enough to pull neighbors to windows. "The inspector obviously does not know what he is doing," the rookie called out from his truck. "This gentleman knows the code better than most lawyers. Everything on this property is legal." Her face moved through 3 shades of red and settled on a color I have never seen in nature. "This is not over, Marcus," she hissed. "There is more than one way to solve a property problem." Alina closed the curtains that night and said what I was thinking. Have you noticed the traffic past our house? Cars slowed like they were shopping and phones appeared like magic. Strangers walked dogs that did not need a walk. At work, complaints continued to hit my desk, and my supervisor, Dave, asked what was going on. I told him I was keeping everything on paper and within the rules. I have documented harassment campaigns for 2 decades. Bullies escalate when the first punch lands on air. Brenda formed something called a neighborhood safety committee with letterhead that looked official. Flyers asked if parents were concerned about unregulated agricultural chemicals near children. The Concerned Parents of Willowbrook Facebook group gained members overnight. A photo series labeled our chicken coop a disease risk and our workshop a fire hazard. At school, Alina heard colleagues whisper, "Is it true your husband runs an unlicensed farm operation?" Dakota found empty seats at lunch. River's friends could not come over because of liability concerns. I dealt with this smear the same way I deal with a bad breaker. I looked for the upstream fault. Using public databases, I checked Brenda's rental holdings. Premier Property Solutions. 3 properties in my city. Her duplex had 3 active violations. An unpermitted bathroom addition from 2019, an outdated electrical panel with heat scoring and multiple double-tapped breakers, a blocked fire exit caused by an illegal storage unit. I filed new complaints using her favorite phrasing against her own property. Violations confirmed. Fines totaling $2,400. Mandatory corrections within 30 days or tenant relocation. We crossed in a Walmart parking lot the next night. 3 neighbors watched her point a finger like a weapon at my chest. "Some problems cannot be solved with paperwork," she said. "Accidents happen. House fires. Gas leaks." She said the quiet part out loud. I answered loud enough for our witnesses. "Are you threatening me, ma'am?" I went home and put another tab in the binder. Threat language. 2 nights later, patrol cars rolled up at 9:47 p.m. on a domestic disturbance call. We were on the back porch eating dinner. The officer, a friend from years of joint inspections, looked embarrassed. 3rd false call this month. Filing false emergency reports is not a prank. It is a felony with real time attached. The line that divided dispute from danger came 1 week later at dawn. I found our chickens dead in the coop. The water was sweet with the smell of antifreeze. Dakota cried while we buried birds named Justice, Liberty, and Hope. The veterinary report confirmed poisoning. My camera caught a figure in dark clothes at 3:07 a.m. The silhouette was a teenager from an HOA family. When we tracked him through a license plate and sat him down with his parents, he said a neighborhood lady had paid him $200 to spray paint move on our workshop and poison the birds. He did not know her name. He described platinum hair, a white Lexus, and yoga pants. I did not press charges on a kid being used as a pawn. I expanded a file from harassment to conspiracy. That was the moment I stopped thinking this was about chickens. It was a test to see how far we would bend, and it set my course. I would not bend. I would build a case. The easiest way to break a family is not a wrecking ball. It is a whisper. Brenda's social isolation campaign spread like mold in a damp wall. Flyers warned about standing water-breeding mosquitoes and disease. Photos clipped from angles that made our compost look like a dump appeared in the Facebook group with captions about rodents. Parents who had waved at us for years now crossed the street. At school events, conversations paused when Alina walked in. Dakota came home quiet. River stopped asking to invite friends. That is the psychological part of the playbook. Exhaust the target, so the next hit lands without resistance. The next hit came from my livelihood. Monday morning, Dave called me into his office with the look of a man caught between friendship and policy. "Marcus, there is a formal complaint against you. Abuse of position. Using city resources for personal vendettas. Intimidation through selective enforcement." The packet slid across his desk like a bad verdict. The evidence showed timestamps of my online property research that matched lunch breaks Brenda relabeled as work hours. She included copies of my complaints against her duplex and claimed I threatened regulatory retaliation. Internal Affairs had to investigate. The city reassigned me temporarily. Basement paperwork rather than field inspections. 25 clean years weighed against a stack of accusations built to look official. I answered with the tool built for sunlight. I filed a Freedom of Information Act request for all communications about my property across city departments. Every email, every memo, every call log. The packet that came back was a map of coordinated pressure. Brenda had contacted the city attorney, the mayor's office, the planning commission, and the health department. Same phrases, same schedule. It looked like a script a telemarketer would read. I requested similar records from her previous cities. Patterns matched like fingerprints. A fire in Phoenix that followed complaints about a holdout property. A flood in Tucson. 3 condemnations in San Diego. Shell companies bought those properties. Below market and paid listing commissions to one name that repeated. Brenda Kensington. Alina started documenting every pass by our fence. Every new car. Each time Brenda jogged past with a phone aimed at the yard. We told the twins to record any adult who asked questions about our family. I upgraded security. Cameras covered the corners. The red glow of motion detectors replaced the old comfort of porch light. The house that had been a sanctuary became a watchpost. A neighbor named Terry Wilson picked a seat on the fence, but brought useful news. The HOA called an emergency meeting to consider hiring a property management firm to deal with community threats. Brenda had stacked the board with 3 new allies and wanted emergency assessments to fund enforcement. I had seen the type of company they wanted to hire. Private outfits that make problems appear until an owner sells. 3 longtime board members resigned rather than attach their names. The next escalation had a siren. Our 3rd false 911 call brought police to our door at 9:47 p.m. The report claimed a violent disturbance. The officer took one look at our quiet porch dinner and apologized. Marcus, someone is gaming dispatch. Phone records and subpoenas would be needed to tag the caller. I added the incident to my timeline. The binder grew thicker. My patience grew sharper. Then the cruelty pivoted from general to specific. Someone slashed a tire on Elena's car in the lot at school. Someone scrawled rat farm on a poster in her office. The twins heard a parent tell a teacher that our home made people sick. Those are the cuts designed to make you angry enough to misstep. I held my line and aimed my energy at the structure behind it all. 3 a.m. is when good detectives find what others miss. I sat in my home office with cold coffee, the binder open, and every municipal drawer available through my logins. Alina brought a blanket and leaned over my shoulder while I scanned incorporation paperwork for the HOA from 2018. There it was. A clause I had never seen in a neighborhood charter. Emergency Property Acquisition Protocol. Legal language, thick as tar, boiled down to this. The board could force sale of any property deemed a community. Threat through municipal partnership agreements. I checked the signatures. Councilwoman Patricia Webb had approved the legal structure. She chaired our zoning appeals board and voted on eminent domain cases. Her history raised a different flag. She had been a business partner with Brenda in California. In our city, she never disclosed the relationship. I pulled property transfers in Phoenix, Tucson, and San Diego and found the same architecture. Neighborhood declares a problem. Board invokes emergency authority. City partnership paper appears. Holdout properties develop disasters. Shell companies buy at discount. Developers resell at 300%. Markup.Alina found the financial piece through public school resources that catalog home ownership for student records. Willowbrook Development LLC appeared with Brenda's signature on the formation. Paperwork 3 months before her first complaint against us. Its stated purpose was residential property acquisition and improvement. The fund that backed it held $4,200,000 from 7 partners with California addresses. 2 had previous fraud investigations in federal databases. Target properties on their internal list included my home and 2 other non-HOA, parcels worth a combined $1,800,000. Councilwoman Webb had sponsored a new inspection policy 60 days earlier. It required agricultural properties to undergo quarterly fire checks. That policy passed 1 month before Brenda's first complaint. You do not need a whiteboard to draw the line. You need a ruler and common sense. I looked at the papers spread across the table and said what had become obvious. They are not trying to get us to join the HOA. They are trying to take our home. The harassment, the false reports, the social pressure, the HR complaint, the midnight trespass, the poisoned chickens. None of it was random. It was a measured plan to generate enough smoke to justify a legal fire. We built a team. I called Jake Morrison, an investigative reporter I had fed tips to for years. He owed me for a city council bribery series that won him an award. I called Carmen Rodriguez, a property rights attorney who lived to fight bullies with statutes. I called Tom Morgan, a forensic accountant with a gift for following money through shell walls, by dawn. My workshop had become a war room. Boards on walls showed relationship webs in colored string. Timelines lined up complaints and votes and policy changes. Financial charts traced dollars across state lines. Carmen organized case law. Civil conspiracy requires 3 elements, she said: agreement, overt acts, and damages. We have recorded agreement, overt acts in the form of false reports and harassment, and damages to property value and emotional health. Tom dug through the Corporate Transparency Act filings and found the names behind the fund. He printed bank pads that linked the HOA budget to a consulting invoice that landed in Willowbrook Development LLC with a date stamp that predicted our nightmare. We set the plan. T-3 days. File an ethics complaint to force Councilwoman Webb to recuse herself from any action involving our property. T-2 days. File the civil complaint to create a public record and alert the court. T-1 day. Submit a criminal referral to the district attorney for fraud, conspiracy, and filing false reports. On T-Day, the journalist would publish with national pickup. We also needed eyes inside the HOAs. Emergency meeting scheduled for Friday. State law made those meetings open. Terry agreed to sit quietly and live stream from his phone. If they tried to vote on acquisition, he would have their overt act. Before any of that could trigger, Brenda executed a clumsy scene. She reported a burglary at her home. Allegedly stolen were membership files, financial records, and a hard drive. No jewelry, no electronics, no forced entry. Her insurance coverage had increased by 400% 2 weeks earlier. Detective Lisa Parks smelled fraud in her first 5 minutes at the scene. Our dinner photos and a restaurant receipt placed us 20 miles away during the supposed break-in. Jake's contact at the insurer added the confirmation. The claim listed items not mentioned to police would be referred to the fraud unit. At the emergency community safety meeting, Brenda tried to reset the story. 40 residents packed the clubhouse. Her PowerPoint was polished. Slides used words like standards, health, and property values, while photos of our workshop sat under captions about fire risk. Carmen introduced herself as our family's attorney and I presented a calm timeline backed by documents and photos of the poisoned birds. The room shifted. Murmurs turned to hard stares at the board table in the parking lot afterward. Brenda walked up with 6 witnesses standing close enough to hear. Sometimes old houses have accidents, she said. Electrical fires. Gas leaks. Insurance companies pay every day. Terry's phone captured it in clear audio. That is conspiracy language when laid beside the harassment record. And it brought us to the threshold none of us wanted to cross. The certified letter arrived the next morning like a dare. Preliminary assessment for emergency property acquisition, signed by Councilwoman Webb, 72 hours to respond. Carmen filed an emergency injunction within the hour, citing undisclosed conflicts and abuse of power. Tom finished tracing a kickback path that linked acquisition fees to a consulting line on Webb's campaign reports. By afternoon, we had enough to interest the FBI. Then everything accelerated. Tom discovered that Brenda's LLC had increased fire insurance on 2 houses bordering ours by 400% in the last month. The documented reason was potential spread from agricultural activity. The timing matched a wave of diesel smells along our block. School bus drivers had logged it in maintenance reports. My camera caught a rental truck circling the street at 2 a.m. on 3 nights. A check of plate numbers showed cash paid with fake identification. I found diesel-soaked rags tucked in the storm. drained 50 feet from our meter. Someone had done a professional pre-soak. The rag placement aligned with our gas line and the electrical junction, setup that makes a fire red as an electrical failure. My body reacted before my brain finished the thought. We are out of time. I evacuated Alina and the twins to her sister's house with a romantic getaway story and photos to match. Jake and I moved into a surveillance position in an abandoned barn across the creek. We set night vision cameras with overlapping fields. We installed backup power on the recorder in case someone cut the line. We put the fire department dispatch on speed dial. Waiting is a discipline. The night air smelled like October leaves and diesel. Every crack of wood or rustle of brush felt exaggerated. At 2:17 a.m., the rental truck slid to a stop 2 blocks away. 2 men walked toward our yard carrying gasoline cans and something that looked like timing devices. They moved like people who have done this before. I zoomed until faces were clear and noted the time. They split. One worked foundation corners. The other worked the workshop wall and circled to the gas meter. They whispered, but the mics picked up enough to show they were staging a delayed ignition. 47 minutes later, their path shone on our screen in lines of accelerant. They were planning a dawn fire when neighbors assume a family is inside. That detail tells you this was not vandalism. It was an intent to harm, not just displace. I waited until they were gone. Then called the fire department at 3:15 a.m. to report a strong chemical odor. The first engine arrived in 8 minutes. Fire Marshal Rodriguez, a colleague from past cases, took one look and went professional cold. This would have looked like an electrical fire, he said. The burn would be complete and the cause obscure. He photographed the timing devices, the pour lines, and the rags at the storm drain. Arson investigators love clean scenes. This was a textbook. State police picked up the arsonists 3 hours later at a diner, miles away because they made a rookie mistake. They paid in cash and bragged loud enough for a waitress who dates a trooper to hear. Their trunk held burner phones with 1 contact number each, fake IDs, and 2 envelopes with $5,000 in sequential bills. The contact number traced through to Hops, straight to an investment account controlled by Brenda. Conspiracy to commit arson. Attempted destruction of property. Crossing state lines to commit a felony. That is not a neighborhood dispute. That is 20 years of federal time. At 5 a.m., Highway Patrol arrested Brenda at the on-ramp with suitcases and a laptop. The drive in her purse held HOA financial files she had reported as stolen in her fake burglary. It also held property valuation spreadsheets and calendar reminders that matched complaint dates. Flight to avoid prosecution joined a list of charges that already filled a page. At 6 a.m., Jake's story went live. HOA president arrested in arson plot. By noon, national outlets had picked it up. The FBI announced a broader look at municipal corruption and HOA abuse. Councilwoman Webb resigned at 10 a.m. The mayor called an emergency press conference to promise a complete review of HOA city partnerships. The remaining board members met and voted to dissolve the emergency acquisition protocol. Their apology came out as a full-page ad. We were wrong. We are sorry. Restitution will be made. Carmen filed the civil lawsuit the same day. The complaint read like a handbook for every homeowner who has been pushed. Conspiracy to interfere with property rights. Intentional infliction of emotional distress. Fraud, harassment. The damages number began with a 5 and had 5 zeros. Tom provided charts that juries understand in seconds because money trails do not lie when you present them well. Neighbors, who had been quiet, finally spoke. 6 families came forward with identical stories of pressure and false complaints over 2 years. A map of our subdivision bloomed with pins where bad things happened to holdouts, fires, floods, condemnations. The narrative about standards melted under the heat of facts. The people who had avoided eye contact for weeks now left casseroles and notes that used words like sorry and thank you at dusk. I walked the line where accelerant had pooled and looked at the workshop door where a teenager had scrawled move in red paint. Alina called from her sister's house and asked how it felt. Like justice, I said. Slow justice and documented justice. The kind that sticks because it is built the way the law instructs you to build it. The courthouse steps filled with 200 people and 3 satellite trucks. The air held the click of shutters and the buzz of live mics. Alina and I walked with the twins between us because they asked to see what justice looks like. Inside, Judge Patricia Morrison read 17 felony counts: conspiracy, attempted arson, wire fraud, interstate criminal enterprise. She added 8 misdemeanors for filing false reports and harassment. Brenda looked like a person who has not met a mirror in a while. The orange jumpsuit did not match the brand catalog that had been her uniform. The posture that used to broadcast control slumped under shackles. Federal prosecutor David Morgan laid out the timeline. The defendant orchestrated a campaign of harassment, fraud, and attempted destruction across multiple states that involved millions in fraudulent transfers. He showed the accelerant photos, the diner video, the burner phone logs, the insurance increases, the HOA charter clause, the kickback path to Councilwoman Webb, and the false police calls. Bail was set at $250,000 because flight risk and danger to the community were not theoretical. Outside, our press conference was calm. We stood on the lawn with the burned shell of our house visible beyond the police tape. Jake moderated because he knew how to keep a crowd focused. I said what I had repeated to myself in dark hours. This was never about HOA versus homeowner. This was about criminals using a neighborhood for cover. Good neighbors help each other. They do not try to break each other. Alina added the line that hit every parent. Document everything. Know your rights. Bullies plan on you being tired. Tired people quit. We did not. A reporter asked if I felt good seeing my tormentor in cuffs. Honestly, I felt sad that it came to this. Alina and I wanted to live and raise our kids and mind our business. We did not ask for a fight. When someone tries to light your home, you either run or you answer with the law. We answered. Neighbors held signs that read property. Rights are American rights, Mrs. Patterson. Brought 2 hens from a rescue and handed them to Dakota and River. Their clucks cut through. The noise like a reminder that ordinary life still exists outside legal terms. Carmen spoke to policy. The federal investigation had identified a network targeting homeowners in at least 7 cities. RICO charges were coming for the full crew. Properties acquired through fraud would be seized, and the proceeds placed in a victim restitution fund. A reporter asked for advice to boards watching. Read the municipal code before you try to bend it. Some of us wrote it. Follow procedures. Focus on real improvement, not personal profit. The law is not complicated if you treat it like an instruction manual rather than a menu. That evening, we returned to the property with friends and planted an oak tree in the front yard where the foundation used to be. Neighbors brought soil from their gardens and poured it around the root ball. We made a circle of people who had been scared to speak and now found their voice. The smell of damp earth cut through the memory of diesel. The kids watered the sapling. The camera crews filmed what happens after a storm when people decide to rebuild rather than relocate. Judge Morrison's sentencing statement 6 months later turned into a paragraph that will land in textbooks. This case is an abuse of community authority for personal gain. Brenda received 8 years in federal prison and $2,300,000 in restitution. Councilwoman Webb received 4 years in state prison and a lifetime ban from public office. The board adopted reforms because they had no choice if they wanted a community left to serve. The city rewrote policies to limit HOA partnerships and require mandatory conflict of interest. Disclosures with criminal penalties for omissions. Insurance. Settlements paid for $125,000 for structure and contents in emotional distress. We put it to work. A new house rose on the same footprint with a safer electrical backbone because I am still an inspector at heart. Solar panels fed a battery wall. The workshop expanded. The chicken coop got predator-proof hardware cloth. The security system earned the label professional grade. HOA voted to dissolve and reform as a voluntary association that throws block parties and installs flower beds. Rather than fines people for mailbox shades, Alina became the neighborhood friend rather than the president. 23 families showed up to plant trees, paint benches, and serve barbecue in a weekend that felt like the town I grew up in. We posted finances online because sunlight is cheaper than audits. My career changed too. The city asked me to design an ethics and community relations curriculum for enforcement officers. 47 cities adopted it in the first year. Conference rooms, filled with people who wanted to learn how to say no without making enemies, and how to document harassment so prosecutors can help. Alina launched a scholarship fund in the Twins' names for students who demonstrate civic courage. The first 3 recipients plan to enter law, journalism, and public service. The legal legacy spread. Thorne v. Kensington appeared in citations and court decisions in 23 cases within a year. Congress used our case in testimony for the Homeowner Protection Act. 3 states passed enhanced penalties for HOA, harassment, and mandated disclosure rules for board contracts. Jake earned a Pulitzer nomination for his series on municipal corruption. A documentary crew filmed a series called The Code Enforcer that reached millions of people who had never thought about property rights until a headline caught their eye. Alina wrote a book called Standing Ground. Law schools added it to property rights reading lists. A year after the fire night, we hosted Good Neighbor Day in the park. 200 people came with pies and stories. The oak tree rose 3 feet. The ribbon around its trunk held thank you notes from families who had been targeted and now felt safe enough to say so. 6 months after sentencing, the sound of hammers and the smell of fresh lumber erased the last of the diesel memory. Our new home kept the lines of the old craftsman and blended them with safe upgrades. The porch held the same swing. The workshop hum returned. Elena's herb garden sprouted basil and oregano again. The flock returned with hens named Justice, Liberty, Freedom, and Hope because the twins wanted the names to mean something this time too. Their clucks mixed with morning laughter like they had before. The voluntary association that replaced the HOA did not issue violations. It scheduled potlucks. It ran a garden tour that raised money for the elementary school's art program. It filled a Saturday morning with a tool-sharing fair where neighbors who had never met shook hands and traded advice on planting soil and miter saw blades. Alina did what she does best. She organized people toward something useful rather than something punitive. Police and fire departments used our case in training. Officers learned how to recognize coordinated harassment rather than treat each call as a single incident. Fire marshals studied the accelerant map photos to teach how arson can be staged to look accidental. City attorneys downloaded Carmen's complaint to use as a template for homeowners who show up with clean binders. The phrase concrete evidence became shorthand in my office for documentation that makes a prosecutor smile. The FBI case expanded. 7 cities. Dozens of properties. A network of shell companies that routed money in loops designed to confuse anyone who does not read spreadsheets for sport. Tom's work helped seize assets worth $8,900,000. Those funds went into a restitution account for families who had lost homes through fake emergencies and rigged condemnations. Carmen used our settlement to seed a national clinic that helps homeowners file pro bono suits when harassment follows a pattern. The twins carried lessons to school. Dakota wrote an essay about cameras, laws, and courage, and got a scholarship to study journalism. River told anyone who would listen that he wants to practice environmental law to protect urban agriculture. The first time he brought home a flyer for a debate on backyard chickens, Alina laughed and said the circle is complete. Our kids are the kind of people who turn pain into practice. The morning I graded the slope of the new driveway for runoff, the number was out of state. Mr. Thorne, my name is Sarah. I live in Phoenix. My HOA is trying to force me to remove a vegetable garden that feeds my family. I found your story online. Can you help? Alina looked up from her herb bed and knew what the call meant. She put a travel mug in my hand and said what she always says when the work calls. Go help them read the rules. We loaded the trunk with code books, tripods, and a spare hard drive. We added a binder with tabs labeled FOIA, civil complaint, criminal referral, and ethics. The oak tree in our yard threw a small shade, and for the first time since the fire I saw our future in that silhouette. Not just new wood and better wire, but a rest of life spent teaching people how to win without being cruel. David beats Goliath when David shows up with a sling, 5 smooth stones, and a plan that the judge will sign if you have been pushed by a board that forgot neighbors are not enemies. Share your story in the comments and tell me where you are watching from. Somebody near you needs to see that they are not alone. Subscribe if you want more stories where ordinary people use clear documentation and clean law to win. The code is full of instructions for how to live together without breaking each other. Follow it, and when someone else refuses, hold it up for everyone to see.